Hello folks, welcome back. Here's a story that's going to run and have legs. Something I reported on, but of course the reach I have is rather limited, unfortunately. I've been covering this story longer than anyone else in more depth and more breadth. But this story is breaking now because a major news network has picked up on it. I suppose in some respects that's good. The real story here is how refugee resettlement agencies take our tax dollars and how they spend them or how they don't spend them for helping refugees. Now, I have been slandered by some people in New York who are upset that I exposed either their ineptitude or their incompetence or their corruption or all three of those things when I went and spoke to South African refugees in Rochester, New York a few weeks ago about the lack of service they've been receiving, the treatment they've gotten from Church World Service there. Now, at the same time, I've complimented and reported many times on Church World Service in other locations like Tampa, Florida, and Dallas, Texas, where they provide a fantastic service and fulfill their obligations. But that is not what's been happening in Rochester. And for that, I receive verbal assaults and abuse and attacks and then slander by people running around spreading rumors about me, calling me a hateful person. No, I'm not a hateful person. If you obey the law and you provide a service that we pay you for as taxpayers, you have nothing to worry about here. And oh, by the way, this isn't a focus simply on South Africans, which is what people presume because they make assumptions. While in Rochester, I spoke to other refugees, including an Afghan national, who, when asked about where he could buy halal food, was told, well, you people eat dog. Why do you need that? Who was denied 2 months of food stamp benefits a year ago when he arrived because his case officer told him to go find DHHS on his own. He barely spoke English, didn't know what the heck DHHS was, went there to find out that he can't even come in. He didn't have an appointment, so he asked if he could make an appointment. They said, no, your case officer makes the appointment. They have your I-94 and the paperwork we need in order to get you matching grants and to get you enrolled in food stamps in New York. So this is a serious problem. Many refugee assistance agencies provide great services, but most of them make a ton of money off the U.S. government. It's a program that generates lots of jobs for bringing people into this country. And last year, as I clearly stated, when Trump suspended refugee arrivals, he pissed off these organizations, so much so that Church World Services repeatedly is written and published things on their website and whined and complained about the Trump administration. Well, these organizations are supposed to help refugees, not be political activists. That's not their role. When you're a political activist, you shouldn't get money from the U.S. government because you're actively working against the interests of this nation. That's another story. But we see something from Maddie Rowland now, a story that's coming out in the Free Press, was published. She was interviewed by CBS this morning talking about this. Now, in this story, it comes across that this is pervasive. My experience, having interviewed hundreds of refugees, not all of whom appear on air, I interact with hundreds, if not close to 800 to 1,000 of these refugees at this point. My experience has been that this happens to some refugees and often in the same locations. I've dealt with people who've had bad experiences in Modesto, California, in Austin, Texas, in Rochester, New York, in North Carolina, in Detroit, in Ann Arbor, and a couple of locations. But the vast majority of people whom I've helped or I've interacted with who have contacted me are having good experiences. The question here isn't whether South Africans are being victims of bigotry or hatred, because that is the case in some locations. We've had a refugee case officer tell a South African refugee when they arrived in New York, the first thing he said to him was, this ain't a red state, so don't expect much. Trump has cut all the benefits. Well, first off, that's inappropriate, delivering your personal political view to a refugee. That's not what you're paid for. Number two, Trump hasn't cut benefits. That's a lie. The big, beautiful bill did remove food stamps, but some people are still getting them, so it's very unclear what's going on there. The amount of money that a refugee gets from the federal government remains the same. But we see case after case that this story is talking about of people being denied access to things. Now, to be fair to Shelley Hepburn, who says she's an advocate of refugees, she also has talked about this story and was one of the first to actually talk about bad situation for people in Connecticut with cockroaches and poor living conditions. And she deserves credit for that. But I've also talked about this. And the problem with talking about this story is, of course, if you go look at the comments on the CBS This Morning video, you'll see the leftist hate wankers and all their lies and spewing all this stuff and attacking the refugees. The issue here is refugee agencies that are paid for service by U.S. taxpayers on behalf of the U.S. government, or by the U.S. government on behalf of U.S. taxpayers, to provide a service for refugees. And that has been my position on this all along. You are paid to provide a service. If you don't want to do that service, then don't apply for the contracts. And the question here becomes a question that I've raised before and I'll raise again in light of the CBS story, and this will probably be breaking now, much larger than my limited exposure and coverage of it. And that is, these agencies need to have oversight. Where is the U.S. government? Why has the U.S. government? And before anyone starts blaming the Trump administration, this has gone on for decades. And the proof of the pudding is the conversation I had with one Afghan refugee in Rochester, New York. They arrived a year ago, put into a hotel, barely speak English, no cash, no food, and the case officer buggered off. She came back a week later. They would have starved to death had it not been for the fact that they had a cousin from Afghanistan who lived in the area who came and made sure they had food during that interregnum. Then they didn't get food stamps and lost, over $1,200 of benefits minimum for a family of 3. At least that much money, if not more, because of a lazy refugee case officer. And then insulted with bigotry, told, why do you need halal food? You eat dog. This should not be happening. This is the story. Now, I want to make it clear to this audience of level-headed people that this represents a small number of refugee cases. The numbers are rising because, of course, the number of people arriving is increasing. But bear in mind that there's a lot in play here. Refugee agencies have bigots and racists that they hire who pretend they're caring leftists, but they're not. We've seen the bigotry and racism displayed against white South Africans and bigotry against Afghans and Nepalese. I've seen it. I've dealt with it. I've seen up close and personal the impact. I've talked to these people. Also, these agencies are not neutral. They're losing billions of dollars of revenue because the Trump administration is no longer paying to bring tens of thousands of refugees in this country every year. They're bringing a handful in. So the money tap has dried up. Also, virtually none of these refugee agencies are forthcoming. When contacted by the media, by myself, they ignore or refuse to answer the questions. Perhaps CBS with its heft and the Free Press with its billions of dollars in backing and Barry Weiss, maybe the door will open. When I contact OOR, they blow me off. Even though I worked with the State Department and I knew people in the department, last year when this program was announced and I requested as a media perspective, and I am an accredited journalist with multiple news agencies, multiple organizations, they still ignored me. Maybe a multi-billion-dollar enterprise can get access to OOR, can get access to USCIS, can get access to the administration to answer these questions that folks that aren't connected like that, like Shelley Hepburn and myself, have run into a brick wall many times. So, once again, this is about the truth. And the truth of the matter is that a small number of South African refugees coming over here are not getting the service that we're paying for. Most are, but some aren't. No one should be subjected to the nonsense that these people are dealing with. It's inappropriate, it's immoral, and quite frankly, it reeks of corruption, certainly of incompetence and bigotry. So, the U.S. government and each of these agencies. In the case of Rochester, I contacted that agent. I sent them an email and left a voice note because they never answered the phone. Then I tried to go there and meet them in person. Wouldn't answer the door. I contacted the state headquarters for Church World Services in New York. They ignored my voice message, never returned my call. I contacted Church World Services in Indiana. Once again, this is the third time. They only contacted me after I did a live stream exposing how their case officer had told the Muslim that he eats dog. After that happened, suddenly they contacted me. But they responded to my email and made the email excuse that, well, it was a long weekend, we couldn't write to you. Doesn't explain why you didn't answer twice last year. Also, I left a voice note. Doesn't explain why I didn't answer that instead of just email. And their response was, we can't talk about individuals. I never asked to talk about an individual. I'm trying to report to you a shortcoming in your program that you need to address. That's the bottom line. So while I labor tirelessly here to bring the truth, and I have for the past year, to folks, and am the person who's done the first ever interview of a South African refugee, not the BBC, but me, and also the first colored couple, first anonymously, then a couple on camera, and the first Indian refugee interview to you, and the analysis of this program from the very outset, while being ignored by the mainstream media until they find something that interests them. Well, hopefully the mainstream media now will pick up on this, because the mainstream media has not done this for the past year. The mainstream media, for the most part, last year has derided this program and lied about it, calling it a program for white farmers. It's not. Who's told you the truth for the past year? Well, I have. Well, hopefully this story by Ms. Rowland will get picked up and it'll get legs. And maybe people will start paying attention to the shortcomings in how we've been administering refugee assistance for the past 40 years under the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1980. and we can hold these people to account for the money that we've given them to take care of people on our behalf. What say you folks? Cheers.